Trigger warning, in this episode we talk about being sectioned whilst having a manic episode, bipolar disorder and eating disorders.
It's like a knot of pleasure at my core again. Yeah, all around my belly and then a little bit down my thighs maybe. Kind of shooting out throughout my body and causing ripples up and down my whole body.
So this is Annie. She's beautiful as a person. I love her a lot. We're friends from before. I haven't just fallen deep during this conversation, although I do tend to do that. It might be a product of the fact that I'm just not talking to that many people. And also because I book cracking guests. We've established that before. But with Annie, I've known her since 2014. We shared a bed in Edinburgh. That wasn't the first time I met her, although it was pretty close. I was doing my first solo show. It was a theatre show called Vanity Bites Back. And I covered myself in butter every day in order to symbolise the ways in which I had a very complicated relationship with food. And Annie was playing this wonderful character that we talk a little bit about at the end of this episode. We recorded this nearly 2 years ago now. It was one of the first conversations I wanted to have when I was thinking about making Come As You Are, the podcast, because Annie's experiences of bipolar and being sectioned have so profoundly impacted her sense of self and her awareness of what it is to be within her body that I thought she'd be fascinating to chat to. Obviously, she's in quite a different place now. Literally, she doesn't live in London anymore. But she was still up for us sharing this, which I'm really grateful for, because I think it fits so well with the other conversations we've had around identity, orgasms, sexuality, sense of self and performance. Super fun as a chat, as well as being quite intense in places. I go quite slowly. Listening to it, I sound a lot less fluent than I do now, or maybe I'm giving myself far too much credit and I never achieve the eloquence I aspire towards. But I think I'm being careful because obviously the stuff we're talking about is big, and I go into some detail around my own experience of an eating disorder when I was in my teens and early 20s, because I thought that was quite important to share with Annie because she was being so open with me. What am I up to at the moment? Oh, I'm doing a comedy course. I'm actually on it. I'm not teaching it, which is really exciting. I love going back into learning, especially when you're around other comics who are in love with stand-up. It's just reminded me of what a challenging, mentally engaging art form it is. It's cool. I'm doing it with Dec Munro. He's teaching it. He's from Angel Comedy. It's a brilliant live performance space, one of my favourites in London, in Angel, and obviously at the moment they're not open, but they're doing lots of courses online if you want to check them out. It's for all sorts of levels. My group is really small and supportive. I like them a lot, and it's meant that I've been able to try out some new ideas without even realising it. Like on Tuesday I talked about the fact that I'd been taking bump pics. I don't know if this is a thing. Maybe it's because I'm not able to see any of them, but all the women in my life, my friends, my family, primarily my boyfriend's family, have been asking for pics of my bump, my pregnancy bump, not my ass, although both are ample, given the amount of biscuits I've been consuming in the lockdown. It's, I guess, like the pandemic equivalent of people asking to touch your tummy. I prefer it. I'd rather this. So what can I share about the ideal bump selfie? Oh, take it from above as if a little baby bird has stolen your phone and is hovering above your forehead. That way, it gives a real nice kind of rounding to the tum-tum. Also, I've got a particular pair of leggings which are kind of like shaping for the bump, and which I whipped off as soon as I'd got the shot done because they're both shaping and restricting. I don't want my baby to come out with a massive elasticated line around their scalp, although obviously just happy and healthy, I'll be very, very grateful, even if it has Spanx tattooed over one ear. Oh yeah, the side angle is fun but does nothing for the bum. I'm not saying that my bum is become in any way diminutive during this period. Quite the opposite, in fact, but weirdly, because it is opposite the bump, the front side is so extruded, the back side looks flat as a pancake. So that's all I've got for you. None of those are going on the Patreon. I think it would just make it weird. There's a few on my Instagram, maybe just stories. What is on the Patreon is a bunch of new audio clips from the Tom interview and the Ariane interview. Really fun little extra clips that we couldn't fit in the main eps. We'll have a look at other things we can share. I'm going to be doing more loop pedal songs in the next couple of weeks because for my birthday I was bought a vocoder, which is similar to what creates the kind of distorted, affected voice Daft Punk are famous for. Blessed be thy name. No longer with us, but their music lives on, and I shall be, of course, extending their legacy. Daft Punk, let's have it. I am so excited for you to listen to this episode. Like I said, Annie is beautiful, open. I love her. I'm sure you will too. Enjoy the bird song from the shed. We recorded it outside in a garden that I no longer have access to, unfortunately. Lockdown has been difficult without one, but c'est la vie. I chose to live in London. Yeah, I think that's everything. I like you. Maybe even... No, let's leave it at that. Here's Annie. I'd not even considered before you suggested it how your mental health might have impacted your experience of yourself as a sexual person. So yeah, I imagine it was quite varied because it made you both more vulnerable and open sometimes to sexual experiences, right?
I mean, one of the traits of a bipolar person is sort of hypersexuality. That's what they say. And especially if you're having a manic episode, you're more likely to seek out sort of risk-taking behaviours and potentially get yourself into trouble. Just, I never really did that, although I thought I'd been impregnated with Jesus, that I was carrying Jesus.
And were you?
Turned out I wasn't actually pregnant. But I remember getting disappointed that I wasn't pregnant.
Well, of course, if you thought you were carrying God's child,
the Son of God,
it would be a come down.
It would.
It would be an anticlimax. What do you mean by a manic episode?
That's a big question. So by manic episode, it's hard to convey what it means without listing sort of symptoms.
Right.
But I'm going to try anyway, and I'll probably do a bit of that.
Yeah.
So for me, being manic is about not sleeping, not eating, energy levels going through the roof, having hallucinations, delusions, paranoia. See, I'm listing symptoms. So it's almost like being in a parallel universe or in a dream, but you're awake and you're causing havoc in your own life and the people closest to you.
Can you give some examples?
Well, I mean, it's hard for me because it's quite personal, the reason why I went manic and the trauma that is attached to that. But, for example, I went into Sainsbury's with a pint of Guinness that I got from the pub opposite. I'd done a shot before that.
I thought you were going to say did a shot.
No, I did a shop in Sainsbury's, went to the pub opposite, laid out like a picnic around the table, and I thought my family was coming for this picnic. Right. This is what was going on in my head. Then I packed everything up very quickly, took the Guinness, went into Sainsbury's, got kicked out, ran across the road, was running in front of cars, thinking that they knew who I was, whoever that might be. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I'm having a manic episode, I need help. And I took myself into A&E and I yelled, get me a psychiatrist. So that was kind of cool that I had that self-awareness, because the thing was I'd studied midwifery at King's 2 years beforehand and we'd done a module on mental health. And, the science stuff I found really dry. To go to a lecture on the liver, for example, I would just be doodling. My mind would switch off and I'd learn that later. But then when it came to a module on mental health, I was like, ears pricked up because I've got family history. I was seeing someone with bipolar. I was very keen to soak up everything and anything I could. But that meant when it came to my own mental health and experiencing bipolar, I was almost ticking off the symptoms in my mind, like the racing thoughts, not sleeping, overspending. I did that. Hallucinating, things like that.
So you didn't feel like you qualified with bipolar?
No, but I certainly do now.
Right. How does that feel?
It's funny because I've recently told an employer that I've got it, and I have been lately.
What, you have been declaring it, or you have been bipolar?
No, I have been declaring it.
Right.
Because they give you these health declaration forms, generally, and you have to say, are you on meds? And I know that I don't have to declare it, but then if I don't, I'm signing something that's a lie. So it's a bit of a grey area. And when I first got diagnosed with bipolar, I remember nurses and things saying to me, oh, don't tell your future employers that you've got this. But for me, it's like, we go on Facebook, there's a time to change post, we repost it, we say, yeah, we've got to talk about this. But then if I then don't have a conversation about it with people I work for, you know, I'm not going to be part of the change that's needed. So I'm trying to do it. They give you a diagnosis, and it's almost as though you can never recover from that diagnosis. You know, that's how it's seen, is that you'll never recover. You will always be bipolar.
Right, so you feel quite restricted by that label?
Yeah.
Or is that why earlier when you were saying, I'm going to describe symptoms, you were kind of reluctant to say it in terms of a list of symptoms?
Yeah. It does feel very reductive.
Does it? Why?
Because it's just really hard to describe the state of being manic. And like, a list of symptoms, that's how I was taught in the lecture hall. They'd sort of list symptoms and you'd write them down. And they didn't really mean anything. And I think the closest thing I could see in like popular culture that portrays something that reminds me of that kind of state is a David Lynch movie, you know. Although I don't think he's ever had any kind of psychosis or madness. The way he makes films, there's something about it that kind of alludes to those states for me. Like, somebody's in bed with somebody looking at someone's face, and then all of a sudden it changes to another face, and then it changes back. And the face is really scary.
So hallucinations.
Yeah.
And that experience of certainly not trusting your mind.
Yeah.
During it, do you feel split? As in, for example, with anorexia, I was very aware that there was one voice in my head that was really wanting to not eat ever, and felt really excited whenever I didn't for a long period of time. And another voice that was more muted that was like, I don't think this is a good idea. I think we're sort of slipping away and we don't have much feeling in our body. But the other voice was stronger. So I had a very strong sense of there being more than one voice in my head. And perhaps also feeling like I didn't trust myself.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't really on one level I was very much in control because everything was very controlled in my behaviours, but at the same time I felt kind of out of control, like I was a child that needed to be taken care of.
Yeah.
I was quite spiky because I didn't want people really in my life. I didn't want them to know what I was doing. Quite secretive, but at the same time quite desperate for somebody to sort of take charge and to pick me up, as it were, kind of cradle me.
Yeah.
But in my behaviour, making that almost impossible because I was so hard to get close to.
Oh yeah, I can relate to that. The being hard to sort of get close to, because I think I change personality when I'm manic. It's like the Annie that you see now talking, she's parked somewhere else and something else takes over, and I literally had multiple voices. Like I was talking in an Irish accent, I spoke patois for 3 days when I was in hospital.
Wow.
Yeah, because I've been working in Lewisham Hospital with a lot of women from Jamaica, and then I started speaking like them.
And were you then in Lewisham Hospital as
No,
a patient?
no. I was at the Priory.
Right.
But it was funny because after I snapped out of it, the other patients there were like, "Oh, we thought you were from the Caribbean. We thought you were white Caribbean."
And did you remember what they were talking about?
Yeah, oh yeah. I remember my dad saying on the phone, "Stop doing that stupid voice." And I was like, had my hand over my mouth, trying to stop the patois coming out, but it wouldn't stop. Yeah.
When you were doing it, was there any element of your brain that was going, this is potentially offensive, I need to be quiet?
Oh, no.
No, because at the time you were just fully in it.
Oh, I was in it,
That was your voice.
Yeah, and I insisted that this nurse put cornrows in my hair, and she did it. She actually did put some cornrows in.
In your therapy since, have you spoken at all about what those voices might have represented or might have been? I guess maybe you don't analyse
the
mania.
not really. I mean, the other thing I did was I spoke in the voice of my dead brother. It was like he was coming through me. That's how I saw it. Like I was possessed by him, and I was talking in his voice and saying that he created the internet and we were twins and I'd been artificially inseminated like 5 years later or something like that, because he was 5 years older than me. At this point, I was being wheeled in a wheelchair by a woman from Help the Aged. It's a long story. She was wheeling me home.
Right. From the hospital?
No, I was sort of let loose on the streets, Manic at that time, and I'd gone to a Help the Aged.
Let loose by who?
Well, people around me who didn't want me to be sectioned.
Right.
Who sort of let me go off into the world, being manic. Because I think no one wanted to take me to hospital.
There was a worry that being sectioned would be kind of bad on your record.
Yeah, something like that. I understand it, but in hindsight, if somebody is in that state, just get them to hospital. However much they protest, however scary it is, however horrible it is being incarcerated, however much abuse I really feel I experienced at one of the hospitals, still, you're not safe, out in the world. You're just not. So it's not a good system, but I kind of wish people had put me away.
It's the best of both
term, but
options.
Exactly. But so I'd gone to this Help the Aged sort of centre and said, I need a wheelchair for Betty, who's a woman I used to volunteer dog walk for, not elderly woman. And the woman said, we've got a wheelchair, but maybe you'd like it. And I was like, yeah, okay. So she was like, do you know where you live? I was like, yes. So she just pushed me home.
Right. And then left you there?
Yeah.
So she could see that you needed help, but there's just... Yeah.
I mean, I was in the Help the Aged, like, hiding in the corner, thinking I was going to get shot through the window. And at that time, I 100% believed there was somebody outside there with guns and my life was at stake, That is your reality.
She's coming home to me. She's coming home to me. She's coming home. Please don't leave.
What's it like to have been in such an overwhelming, chaotic headspace where you don't trust yourself and you think that everybody else is out to get you, and then you start to think, maybe I'm getting better, but obviously because you've been having an experience where you're not sure who you are, how do you then trust that the getting better is really getting better?
What, and not just another personality episode. I think a lot of it for me was to do with sort of noticing my energy levels, and I'd made a big chart the most recent time I came out of hospital. I made a chart and it would have the date and my mood and what meds I was on and how I was feeling, and like it was very detailed, and the nurse was quite impressed. But I noticed in the days after I was out of hospital, I said that I felt fizzy by about 6 o'clock. I described it as fizzy, where I could feel the energy coming. And like, for me, knowing that I'm getting better is when I notice that I don't feel that volcanic energy anymore, and everything calms down and settles. And then also it's the reaction of friends and family. I went out for the day with some friends shortly after I'd had my last episode, and I remember one of them saying like, oh yeah, you weren't quite right that day. And that's actually, it's a bit, it's not hurtful, but it's quite hard to hear, but at the same time it's kind of good to hear because you can sort of see how you're getting better. I also keep a 5-year diary. So since my last episode, I've been doing it for about 2.5 years. Every day I write a little tiny paragraph about my day. And that's another good way of seeing how the madness has sort of died down and I've come back to myself.
Yeah. What an amazing experience of selfhood. Because you are you throughout those episodes, right?
And it's a chance to sort of reinvent yourself as well, in a way. Because everything's been sort of destroyed.
I knew you, and it was the first time you'd been in hospital. You then went back into hospital and I came to see you.
Do you know what? I don't remember that.
Right.
I don't remember seeing you.
Dan and I came.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember Dan coming, but I don't remember seeing you there.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
It was really upsetting. Because you actually were already showing signs of being better, but you're right, there was something about the quality of your eyes that were quite hard. They were quite kind of staring in a way.
Really?
and everything was a little stiff in your movement, and you were extremely paranoid. And what was hard was knowing how much of your paranoia was justified, because you were accusing the doctors and people who you were staying in a room with of stealing from you and lying to you. And to a certain extent, some of that could have been true.
Some of it was true.
Because you were in a mixed room.
Yeah, there was a woman who wanted to punch me.
You had no where to really lock away your things.
Yeah.
And the state of the unit was really
Horrific.
low level.
Yeah.
We met in a kind of garden area, which was actually just a block of concrete with a net over the top.
Yeah.
So you did feel, I thought to myself, this is such an unhealthy place to be. I feel low and my mental health is pretty good at this point. So if I was in a really unstable headspace, this would probably make me feel much worse. And it's the place where you're supposed to be healing.
I know.
So it seemed the last place you'd want to be. And very much feeling very institutionalised.
I was accused of trying to escape, which I never did, but apparently the ward manager came over and said, oh, some of the other patients said you tried to escape when one of your friends came or something. But I think it was just that the other people were getting a little bit jealous or something, because I was having loads of visitors that time, which was the saving grace of it all. That garden was supposedly the Garden of Hope. We called it the Garden of Despair. It was so awful. But for example, during that stay, I burnt my face. I don't know if you remember seeing a burn there.
Yes.
I took photos. And it was that I tried to get a clean cup. I asked for a clean cup and they wouldn't give me one. So I drank from the hot urn and boiling water went over my face.
Oh my God.
And the cleaner saw me do it. And I went to the nurses, opened the door and said, can I have some burn gel, please? They slammed the door in my face. And the doctor wrote me up for cold sore cream, which I've never had a cold sore in my life. He then, at my discharge appointment, apologised for that. But it was just unbelievable.
It really opened my eyes to the fact that you're so vulnerable in that situation, because your mental health has been questioned. Like you said, you've been sectioned. So already, on paper, your mental state is seen as being untrustworthy.
Yeah.
Delusional, not within your right mind. All of these phrases, which to a certain extent are true. But then, obviously, if you raise anything that's genuinely going on, it's very easy for them to accuse you of lying or of not knowing what you're talking about. So exactly, when we came in to see you and you were telling us these things, it was impossible for us to know what was real, what wasn't, and how in trouble you were, how much we needed to step in and say, because what we're going to do, get that ward closed down. The whole situation felt already like the NHS was just on its knees.
Oh, yeah. I think that is a particularly horrendous ward.
Really bleak.
Yeah. St Anne's.
Ha!
There, I said it.
It's not me, not we, must be the situation. Burn it all down to the ground, let's start again.
You have done subversive performances. I've seen you at nights where you've been dressed entirely in bin bags, had a huge smile striped across your face from ear to ear with lipstick, and had a kind of witch's hat stretched over your head, and then given birth to things and shown your body, surprisingly, little flashes of you naked. So it must have been really hard to see, not to see the difference, because obviously context is everything, but to be able to tell I'm feeling ready to perform again, or am I actually having another episode?
Well, I did perform Anne Frank Manic when I was Manic up in Scotland.
Right.
And that was quite hard because I was in a trunk for half an hour and then I pop out.
Who made you stay in a trunk for half an hour?
I know. It's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
They should have just cut the back out.
Yeah.
It's wrong.
Did you go along with it because you thought it was an artistic opportunity?
Yeah. It's kind of sad, really.
It's not. It just shows the kind of thing people are prepared to put up with.
I mean, I did get laughs.
When you popped out?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it worth
it?
So it's worth it. For that half an hour of thinking you might never escape a trunk. I mean, I'm starting to see some through lines here, Annie. What happened? How many times have you been sectioned in hospital?
I've been in hospital 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've actually technically only been sectioned once because the other times were voluntary.
Right. You've been out for 2.5 years?
2 years.
And throughout my time of knowing you, you've quite often been in relationships, right? Yeah. I have not been in relationships except for at present, and have often been really envious of your capacity to be super open to love and to affection and to finding chemistry with people. So how has your experience of bipolar and being sectioned affected your sexuality?
In the first year after I first got ill, I don't think I slept with anyone for a very long time, like a year or something, and I felt completely sort of sexless, and I had raised prolactin, which is what you produce when you breastfeed, which is a hormone that can be raised due to these drugs they give you, and I just lost my libido completely, and it was awful. I think I started sort of trying to go on dates a little bit after that, and I felt really vulnerable, to be honest, you know.
Why?
Because I think it was partly not really knowing who I was after that, you know, because on a date you have to present yourself in a way, don't you? And for me, I had quite a shaky sense of self after that first episode. And really, all through this time of having short relationships that I don't want to say they meant nothing to me, because that's sort of, it's not true. But I was always looking for love. You know, I always wanted to find a boyfriend, and for whatever reason, I never could. And that was a source of sadness for me. But I could seem to do the kind of first 3 months of a relationship, but it would never go any further, you know.
Was there any pattern in the breakdown?
There was a lot of kind of men that just didn't really want to commit to me for whatever reason. I don't know. And it was always a hard moment of saying, by the way, I've had psychosis, you know.
How did that conversation go?
Usually people are understanding. They make you feel quite okay about it. I think for the first few years, I wore my heart on my sleeve, and I would just tell anyone about it. Because a lot of people, they'd want to hide that. But for me, because I'm such an open, expressive person, it's like I needed to get it out of me, you know. Now, I wouldn't do that now, you know. I keep more things inside, I think.
Do you think that's because you've actually processed it?
Yeah.
So you don't need to almost tell everybody immediately to see if they've got a good take?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
See if they've got any tips or advice or have been there. That's kind of why you end up sharing stuff a lot, I think, when something's really alive for you and you still want to ask for help with it. Or input.
And, you know, it was... I can't remember how long I waited to tell my boyfriend recently. But I waited a little bit of time because I wanted him to get to know me and not to have that as something that may cause judgments, you know, that are not true. Because I think a lot of people think if you've got bipolar, you're going to be really moody. You're going to be one thing one minute and then another thing the next, and it's all going to be very volatile. But in my experience, that's not the case. It's. I think saying it's a mood disorder is a bit misleading, because for me it was like a disorder of reality. You know, it's a disorder of not knowing what the hell's going on, and it's not that I'm in a really good mood. I've completely lost touch with reality when I'm manic.
Did you really want this? Do you know yourself? How well do you know?
When you described kind of volcanic energy and then feeling that dissipating, so you felt like you were more stable, it made me think of orgasm. Can I ask you, for you, what it feels like to orgasm?
They really vary in my experience. Sometimes you get like a build up and like a little kind of puff of pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
but you know that a big one's coming, and then you'll get the real kind of explosive one. And then sometimes you get the anticlimax where you feel a bit of pleasure coming, and then where's it gone, and it just disappears. And then you get the ones where it builds up and up and up, and then there's like this. It's like a knot of pleasure at my core, kind of shooting out throughout my body and causing ripples up and down my whole body.
Does that happen every time?
No. It's much better when somebody else does it for me.
Where does it ripple out over?
Mainly the sort of upper torso, I would say. Yeah, all around my belly, and then a little bit down my thighs, maybe. Yeah, sort of the middle bit of my body.
I think I find it more in my legs.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Can you specifically feel it in certain areas? Like for me, I think I need my clitoris to be like really gently warmed up. And obviously it depends. If I'm really turned on, if it's a certain time of the month, much quicker, much easier. Don't need necessarily so much foreplay. But most of the time, yeah, my clitoris to be really gently warmed up. And then also G-spot stimulation from inside, so that the two things are kind of working together.
Oh, okay.
Almost like there's like a warmth being created between them.
Ah.
Because you know that the clitoris is like the inverse of the G-spot, right? They're kind of reflections of each other.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, inside of you, it's like the front wall of the vagina is your G-spot, and that's the area feels a little bit like the roof of your mouth.
Yeah, the like a washboard sort of.
Yeah.
Or, you know, that they play, the percussionists play the little washboard. Anyway, it feels a bit like that. That's what I think of.
No, nice. Yeah, and then that slowly, and then there's a moment of it kind of widening and opening and feeling almost like when you're chasing a yawn. You know, when you try and make yourself yawn.
Yeah, or sneeze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That feeling of kind of opening, but also you're not fully in control of it. Your body needs to take over.
Yeah, definitely. Like the last one I had took me by surprise, and that doesn't often happen.
Really?
Yeah. Normally, I just need clitoral stimulation, really. I don't really need anything inside. That can be pleasurable, like to have a finger or a dildo up there while someone's going down on me. My boyfriend, not someone.
That's interesting. A dildo at the same time as somebody going down on you.
Yeah.
Wow, I've never tried that.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Because they generally are a bit curved to sort of hit the G-spot.
Yeah. I really feel like at the back of my vagina, there's a lot of potential sensation there. Because the G-spot is obviously at the front, or the top. We're doing a lot of sort of curving our hand gestures. But the I know that like around there is loads of nerve endings. I can feel it. And so but there's only so much you can stimulate at once, you know? There's only so much. And also, sometimes I feel like too much stimulation overwhelms. Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. Sometimes gentle to do less is best.
Definitely. Less is more.
Less is more, yeah.
Because I imagine that my vagina is quite like me in the sense that it's like, I'm quite capable, thank you. You know, so it wants the space, imaginatively, to be able to fill in its own thoughts. So it doesn't want, you know, if it's completely overwhelmed, it's a bit like, I think I'm being overpowered here. When I'm not able to sort of explore what's available to me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think pressure is the biggest killer.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely guilty of putting pressure on myself to come.
Really?
Sometimes, at times. Not every time. But sometimes I worry for the other person, like, oh, is their jaw hurting? I've got to do it soon. You know, and that's horrible, isn't it? And I've heard about this idea of mindful sex where, you know, you're just in that moment with the sensation and your mind's not racing trying to get more turned on by something to come more quickly, you know, just like taking that out of the equation and just enjoying the moment. I think what with pornography and all of that kind of stuff, not that I watch much pornography, but you know, I think that numbs you to an extent.
You're no fun anymore. All you do is work that clit. I need more to get at it.
Is there any part of you that you think, wanted to lose control, wanted to go mad so that you could be taken care of?
A big part of it was a response to trauma and not being able to cope with the reality as it was. So it was like an escapism.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that was the most natural thing for my body to have done at that time, was this reality I can't cope with, so I'll create another one, you know?
Mm.
And I'll create another one where I can play out all of my fears and create this sort of landscape of like blowing things out of proportion. So in real life, you know, I wasn't being chased by snipers, but I obviously was feeling threatened and vulnerable. But then it was like all these feelings were sort of magnified to the nth degree.
That makes complete sense, because if you feel attacked or if you feel like you're being chased by bad feelings, then by making them into something physically real and very intimidating, you're absolutely justifying your sense of discomfort or vulnerability, because you're kind of externalizing that quite murky internal feeling that's hard to describe.
Yeah.
And is much easier to explain to other people if it's a real sniper who's aiming at you. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons I'm so interested in, like, female sexuality in particular is because it's such an internal experience. And to an extent, there's no way to fully verbalise it, because that's the kind of magic of it as well.
Yeah.
Is that it's all going on inside and you can't really see it. And there's no language for it because it's under-explored in our vocabulary.
Yeah.
But also at the same time as being magic, that is, the flip side of that is vulnerability. Because if you can't, in our society, if you can't verbalise something in quite an exact way, it's very open to misinterpretation or exploitation. And that's, I think, what's also coming up with your episodes of madness or mania, is that because you're not able to communicate what you're feeling internally, perhaps because you're not allowed to talk about it with people who it's happening with, like who are close to you, your loved ones. And so that sense of like a suppressed reality right in front of you then can lead to you inventing just an entirely other reality.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought about it like that, but like I'm feeling threatened and then I create a gunman trying to kill me.
Yeah.
And everyone knows and can relate to the fear of that. But they might not necessarily be able to understand my fears relating to my trauma and things like that. Performance, I find it so freeing because it's like an escape. It's larger than life. It's like letting people laugh. It's
the right kind of release.
Yeah, it's the right kind of release. And the right kind of alternate reality. One that I have more control over.
So that was Annie. One thing I didn't mention, and that we don't mention in this interview because it's only a recent development, is Annie is a fantastic artist, always has been, but has only just started selling her stuff online. I'm going to link to her Etsy shop in the episode notes, along with all the socials, etc. Anything I've mentioned, the comedy course I talked about at the top. Annie's illustrations are stunning. She sent me a pocket of hope in the post probably a month ago, and it's one of the most generous gifts I've ever got in the mail. God, it made me feel good. You can buy them and you can post them to other people. They are gorgeous little pieces of artwork. She does painting, she does cards. Yeah, get on there. This episode was edited by the fantastic Daisy Grant, and our podcast is produced by me, Helen Duff, Daisy Grant and Lorna Treen. Hit us up if you want to pay wonderful women to produce top quality audio content for you. If you'd rather just do a one-off donation for this podcast and the others you can listen to all online, give us a donation at www.ko-fi.com/Helen Duff and become a regular subscriber at patreon.com/Helen Duff. That's it. Thank you again for being here. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you thought on any of the socials or those links I just suggested. And as ever, take care of yourself.